While waiting for interpreters, let me explain in Korean briefly about session first, and then we will conduct English. 한국 참가자분들에게 잠깐 좀 안내 드릴게요. 지금 여기 프로그램이 지금 프로그램북에 있는 거랑 조금 업데이트된 게 있어서 바깥에서 영어로 된 요 유인물을 좀 참조해 줘서 요거대로 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 그래서 오늘 잠시 후에 시작하는 것이 그 3일 동안 전체 세션에 대한 일종의 브리핑하고 오리엔테이션 성격으로 5분이 나와서 이렇게 발표를 할 겁니다. 그래서 알다시피 이번 주제가 그 SDG 지속가능 발전 목표에서 16번 평화와 인권과 민주주의를 다하는 16번 하고 그다음에 세부 목표 4.7에 가면은 세계 시민 교육이라고 있는데 이 두 가지를 연결해서 이게 세계 시민 교육과 인권 평화 민주주의가 어떻게 연결되는지 그거에 대해서 그 5분을 모셔서 지금 각 나라에서 어떻게 진행되는지 그다음에 유엔에서 어떻게 진행되는지 같이 한번 쭉 들어보고 그다음에 특별히 마지막 발표는 코이카에서 지난 9월에 전 세계적인 캠페인을 이제 전개를 했는데 코이카까지 소개하게 되면서 이것이 서로 어떻게 연결이 돼서 시너지를 발휘할 수 있는지에 대해서 한번 살펴보는 시간입니다. 그거 끝나고 그다음에 바로 이어서 이 자리에서 개막식이 진행되도록 하겠습니다. 그래서 지금 통역 기기 없으신 분들은 그 밖에서 이렇게 받으시고요. 발표자가 다 한국 분들 있지만은 일단은 영어로 이렇게 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 좀 양해 구합니다. 그리고 개막식 때는 뭐 한국어, 영어 같이 섞어서 이렇게 진행될 예정입니다. Okay, are you ready to start? Okay, let's start. So we have 5 speakers. Before that, let me present to you this program book once again briefly. This is a colorful book. Do you know where is our program? Page number? Page number 11. You can see page number 11. I want to remind you once again the theme of this Busan Democracy Forum. By the way, this is the second Democracy Forum, right? So who were in the first Democracy Forum? Please raise up your hand. How many of you? First, it was January 2018. I see about 7 or 8 hands. So that means 80% of participants the first time to Busan Democracy Forum. So special welcome to all, second and then first timer. And theme of this Busan Democracy Forum 2019, do you remember the theme? Transformative. Can anybody? Transformative global citizen education for peaceful, just, sustainable world. As we discussed in the morning, that is a target 4.7, global citizen education, and then peaceful, just come from SDG 16, and sustainable world is about SDG as a whole, And transformative is a title of 2030 agenda, transforming our world, So for 2 days, we are going to discuss what is the role of global citizen education for peaceful, just, sustainable world in connection with the SDG 16. That's what we are trying to do, Okay? So, as you know, this year, HLPF, UN, High-Level Political Forum, was in July, and then there are 4 global goals were reviewed. The 4, 8, 4 for education, 8 for job, and then 10 inequality, 13 climate change, and 16. That's why we want to discuss what are the outcomes of HLPF, High-Level Political Forum from New York, especially 4.7 and 16, and 17 is so permanent, right? So we have invited 5 persons. The first speaker from the UNESCO FCU. UNESCO FCU is an international organization focusing on global citizen education. So they are going to give us update what's happening in the different countries in terms of global citizen education, target 4.7. And second speaker, if you look at the program, is Daniel Perel. He's from New York, and he will give us update what happened in New York during HLPF, especially the target 4.7. So first we start with the low ground, and then we go high, New York. Okay, these are about 4.7. Then we go to SDG 16, the main theme of the first Busan Democracy Forum. So Josna will come and explain to us about joint CSO monitoring about SDG 16. There's a joint the report. Then we'll go broader. So as you know, there were two HLPF, July, ECOSOC level, September, UN General Assembly. So Jeff, also from New York, he will give us update what happened in the UN General Assembly September, and also what next. There are a lot of planning about campaign 2020. Then final one will be by COICA, Vice President of COICA, Ms. Song Jin-ho. He will give us what COICA has been doing, especially the campaign. The campaign is an important component of global citizen education and also capacity building. So we have these 5 speakers, one after another. It's going to be very interesting, informative, and also very challenging, because we are going to discuss different issues together, Okay? Are you ready? All right, good. Then let me invite one by one, but I forgot to introduce myself, sorry. So my name is Anselmo Lee. I'm the advisor to Asia Development Alliance, ADA, and also Asia Democracy Network, which is a co-organizer of Busan Democracy Forum, together with the COICA, and then Busan Metropolitan Government, and also Busan the Democracy the Foundation. Okay, the first speaker, according to program, sorry, there was some spelling mistake. Instead of Goun, Mr. Kim Jae-hong from the UNESCO, he's going to give us update. Let's give a big welcome hands to the Mr. Kim. Yeah, please. You have about 10 to 15 minutes. Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. And good morning. Oh, good morning. Yeah, very good morning, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm Jay. You can just call me Jay from UNESCO APSEU. And I'm very, very glad and very honored to be invited as the first presenter of this very meaningful forum. And I think this year's topic is global citizenship education. One of the topics of the forum is global citizenship education. And as you know, global citizenship education is quite important, not only in Korea, but also in the world. So I think it's a very good opportunity to discuss the global citizenship education together. Now, I'm going to present the implementation of SDG 4.7, especially focusing on global citizenship education in some countries. Okay, first I will briefly introduce the APSEU, and then I will move to GCD activities in countries, and then I will wrap up with way forward. Okay, introduction is APSEU. It's quite long name. Asia Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding. This is not the end. Under the auspices of UNESCO. So it's a very long name, but in short, we call it APSEU. So APSEU is a UNESCO Category 2 center and established in 2000, and there were agreement between the Korean government and UNESCO HQ. And the 2 major mandates are Education for International Understanding, which is EIU. This is why EIU is included in abbreviation APSEU. And also, the other mandate is Global Citizenship Education, in short, GCED. Now, UNESCO APSEU has become one of the most leading agencies regarding global citizenship education. APSEU is promote global citizenship education policies and also curriculums, and also doing many workshops for teacher training and so on. So this is APSEU, located in Seoul. So please come to our center anytime, and you are very welcome. Okay. Let me briefly introduce the national campaign of the Korean government. This is the Korean case. I will briefly introduce the Korean case. Korean government, last year, the Korean government ambitiously launched the national campaign, so-called KSDG. It's like Korean style SDG. So the purpose of the campaign is to interpret the 17 goals of UN SDGs and revise the goals and targets under the Korean context. So, the leading agency of the KSDG is the Korean Ministry of Environment. And each goal has representing government organizations. For example, UN Sustainable Development Goal 4 is what? UN SDG Goal 4. You're right, education, right? So, the Korean Ministry of Education is the representing agency of KSDG 4. So, under the umbrella of the Korean Ministry of Education, each target from 4.1 to 4.7 has its own working groups. As you can see on the slide, 4.1, for example, 4.1 is about primary and secondary education, right? So the representative of working group 4.1 is KAIS, Korea Institute for Curriculum and Evaluation. So in this way, 4.7, there are two representative organizations. One is Korean National Commission for UNESCO, and the other one is APSEU. Korean National Commission for UNESCO is focusing more on ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, while APSEU is focusing more on global citizenship education. Okay, this is the framework of KSDGs. Now, let's move on to the GCD activities in countries. Okay, first, teacher exchange. As you can see, there are 7 countries: Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Mongolia, Philippines, and Thailand, and Vietnam. These 7 countries are very, very interested in cultural diversity and also very interested in international understanding. So these 7 countries are doing teacher exchange with Korea. So Korean teachers are dispatched to these 7 countries, and vice versa. Teachers from these 7 countries are invited to South Korea. Then all teachers are teaching their subject areas or their own languages or their cultures in front of local students for 1 semester. This is quite big project. So this project started in 2012, and now it's more than 90 teachers joined this project. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide. This is about the GCD curriculum development. As you can see, there are target countries in Cambodia, Colombia, Kenya, Mongolia, Lebanon, Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Uganda. This is 3-year cycle project, and the first round was 2016 to 2018, which was finished last year. The 4 countries of the first round was Cambodia, Colombia, Mongolia, and Uganda. Now, this is the second round, and the targeting countries are Kenya, Lebanon, Philippines, and Sri Lanka. So the objective of the project is support and facilitate the integration of GCD into national or local curriculum. Let's go to the details. Okay, for Cambodia. Cambodia has very interesting context and background regarding global citizenship education. The Cambodian government said Cambodia suffered very tragic history. As you know, Khmer rules, right? So this kind of social integration is very important in Cambodia, and also they said conflicts and tension with neighboring countries like Vietnam, Thailand, and Myanmar are very serious for Cambodia. So that's why Cambodian government decided to develop policies and curriculums for global citizenship education in their context. So they developed a policy and curriculum for 2 subjects, moral civics and history. And now they are trying to expand the subject for more subjects in Cambodia, and also the Cambodian Ministry of Education is trying to develop a textbook for global citizenship education now. So there were some changes in Cambodia. Before the introduction of GCED, many Cambodian teachers teach like unilateral, just deliver the knowledge, and students write down the knowledge and memorize and then test. But now the class has been changed. Teachers adopted various transformative pedagogies, including role play, debate among students, and students' presentation, group activities, and so on. So many Cambodian students mentioned that the class became very, very interesting. So there were some changes in Cambodia, and also in Colombia. Colombia has its own context. As you may know, in 2016, there were peace agreement between the Colombian government and military forces. But still now, there are some social unrest unrest regarding the tension and conflicts between the 2 forces. So this kind of confrontation is affecting every corner of Colombia. The Colombian government said that. So the Colombian government mentioned the most important issue in education in Colombia is citizenship education. So global citizenship education is being implemented under the framework of citizenship education in Colombia. So also there were some changes after the introduction of global citizenship education. For example, whole school approach. As you know, global citizenship education cannot be achieved successfully without the whole school approach. So teachers, students, parents, and local communities all join the education activities. Many Colombian students said, we did some interview with the students in Colombia, and many students said, for Colombia, global citizenship education is, of course, very important, but more important thing in Colombia is family violence, they said. Family violence is the most serious problem in Colombia, they said. So the students asked the Colombian government to involve parents, students, schools, teachers, and local community into all activities of global citizenship education. So they said global citizenship education must be start from the family level. So that was quite big changes in Colombia. Okay, then let's move on to the Kenya. Kenya is the second round country, so we has yet to see the changes, but Kenya has its own context. Kenya consists of more than 46 ethnic groups and also many religions and also many languages. So cultural diversity is a remarkable factor of Kenya society. So Kenya government said global citizenship education is very important in terms of human rights and peace and harmony in Kenyan society. In addition, Kenya is in the period of curriculum reformation. So it was quite nice timing to join this project. Now, Kenya is developing policies and national curriculum of GCED, and also Kenya is trying to integrate the contents of GCED into more than 10 subjects. So it will become quite big project in Kenya. And for Mongolia, Mongolia is also very interesting. Many Mongolians mention that cultural diversity is very important in Mongolia, and Mongolian government mentioned that they want to know what's going on outside Mongolia. So in order to do that, the Mongolian government adopt global citizenship education as the means of understanding cultural diversity and global issues. So this is the mention of the Mongolian government. And there were some very interesting changes also in Mongolia. For example, the most remarkable thing in Mongolian class was multidisciplinary. For example, we did a monitoring in Mongolian schools, and we visited a Mongolian high school. The topic of the class was chemistry. The teacher were teaching about the chemistry, and the topic is about nuclear waste. So the teacher teaches students about the equation of nuclear waste, chemical equation of the nuclear waste. And then the teacher showed students a very big map of the world. On the map, there is a graph of the proportion of emission of nuclear waste according to the nation and regions. And then, the teacher facilitate the discussion among students on how to reduce the emission of nuclear waste as a Mongolian citizen, and as an Asian citizen, and also as a global citizen. So this kind of multidisciplinary approach was very conspicuous in Mongolia. And let's move on to Lebanon. Lebanon, as you know, this is a country in Middle East. Lebanon is also in the period of reformation of national curriculum. So Lebanon is also trying to develop policies and curriculum development of global citizenship education. And Lebanon has also quite a unique context about the word global. Many Lebanese government officials mentioned that global sounds like negative, a kind of scout of imperialism or westernization. So instead of using global, the Lebanese government would like to elaborate the word as a kind of human citizenship education. So they are trying to interconnect the global citizenship education into human rights and peace education. And Philippines is also in the period, I will make it very short in 2 minutes, okay? So in the Philippines is also in the period of review of national curriculum, and the Minister of the Department of Education in the Philippines mentioned the global citizenship education is especially very important in rural areas like Visayas and Mindanao. These two areas are kind of conflict-affected area, right? So the minister mentioned global citizenship education is very important. Also, Sri Lanka. You remember that there was a terrorist attack in early this year, right, in Sri Lanka. So Sri Lankan government mentioned that peace and human rights will be implemented under the framework of global citizenship education. So next week, Sri Lankan government will organize a very big nationwide workshop regarding global citizenship education. Last one, Uganda. Uganda context, refugee. Many refugees are coming into Uganda, and it was quite impressive and quite touching because Ugandan government implement global citizenship education even in the schools inside refugee camp. So they are doing lectures and doing many activities with refugee students in order to foster them into a very responsible citizens. So this kind of activities were quite impressive in some countries. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, this is the UN seminar, but this will be covered by the Daniel next. So, okay, APSEU also established many networks in the region, Arab states in Latin America, Asia Pacific, and Africa regions, and also Europe, and so on. Okay, this is about the International Conference on Global Citizenship Education, which was held last month. There were more than 1,000 persons came from 77 countries. This means that global citizenship education the demand on GCED is growing and growing. Okay, the way forward. Okay, the clarification of GCED. Still, the definition of GCED is controversial, and also we need to identify the relationship with the other concepts like education for sustainable development and human rights education and peace educations and democratic citizenship educations and so on. This is our task, a very important task. APSEU is doing the research about this. And also number 2, establishment of the global GCED monitoring system. So national level, APSEU is also doing research on the development of draft indicators for GCED, and then in the future, we are going to expand the national indicator to the global level. But this is just early stage now. And number 3, teacher training. Yeah, many countries ask for more and more opportunities for teacher training and upgrade of teaching modules and pedagogies. And last one, enhancement of GCED implementation in formal, non-formal education, including early childhood and lifelong learning. Tomorrow there is a session about lifelong learning in 2 o'clock. So please come and join tomorrow. And I think this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kim Jae-yong. So this is an overview of what's happening on the ground, different countries, very interesting. So there was also, at the end, there's an advertisement. If you know more about this activity, tomorrow 2 o'clock, right? Wow, good. Next one, let's invite Daniel Perel from New York. He is in New York, which means monitoring what is happening in the UN General Assembly, HLPF. So he will give us an update from the New York, what's happening in the discourse and policy discussion. Yes, please.
We'll see how it goes. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I thought there were some people here. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
There, hi. So I thought it would be helpful just to start to understand a little bit about who's in the room, if you don't mind. So I'm going to start with a few questions. So how many of you are familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals? So nearly everyone, but not everyone, which is noteworthy. How many of you know what SDG 4 is? And what 4.7 is? Okay. How many of you know what HLPF stands for? Aha, see, fewer. High-level political forum. How many of you know how it works?
Who knows?
You're all lying because nobody knows how it works. Just kidding. How many of you attended the HLPF this year? Great, could you come up and give this presentation? Oh, okay. And how many of you are familiar with what happened with Goal 4.7 at this year's HLPF? Almost nobody, so nobody can tell me I'm wrong. My name is Dan Perel. I just finished a term serving as the NGO Major Group's organizing partner, which assisted with facilitating participation of civil society in the high-level political forum spaces, both the General Assembly and ECOSOC, because there are 2 HLPFs, as Anselmo mentioned. But I'll limit this presentation to really what happened with Goal 4.7 and Goal 4 this year. So a few facts about the HLPF. It takes place every year in July over a period of 8 days. The first 5 of those days focuses on different goals. It's a thematic review, and the last 3 days focus on voluntary national reviews, which is a national review that's done, you guessed it, voluntarily. So the first 4 years of the HLPF cycle has been completed, which means that you had 15, 16, 17, 18, or 16, 17, 18, 19, depending on how you want to count it. And then it met under the General Assembly this year in 2019. So the goals under review this year were, as Anselmo mentioned, 4, 8, 10, 13, and 16, and 17 is reviewed every year. But one of the interesting dimensions this year was that whereas usually at the July HLPF there's an outcome document, because there was also the General Assembly HLPF this year, there was no outcome document in July. There's just a political declaration from September. It's quite technical, but what it means is that there is no official document that articulates the status of implementation of Goal 4, or 8, 10, 13, 16, whereas for the other goals, there was this negotiated document. But there are a number of non-negotiated documents that we can look at, the chair's summary, the Sustainable Development Goals report, and things of this nature. So I'll talk a little bit about those. I know it's thrilling, right? You guys still with me? Okay, one of you is, so thank you to that one. So there were 300 side events and exhibitions this year. I could only attend 200 of them. So I'll just report back from those. 18 were focused on SDG 4, and there were a number of seminars, you saw the picture earlier, and luncheons and receptions focused on Goal 4.7. I hope you're all somewhat familiar with the text. If not, it's in your booklet. I'll save you the time, and I won't read it, but you should take a look at it. But because we're in Korea, I think it's important to acknowledge that the term global citizenship is actually in Goal 4.7 and in the agenda itself because of a Korean ambassador who was serving in New York during the negotiations of the agenda. So we, in many ways, have Korea to thank for the mention of global citizenship. If you like it, then that's great, and if not, you can complain to Ambassador Han. So I'll talk a little bit about what happened with Goal 4 implementation, at least as it was reported in New York. So the wonderful contribution we heard from Jay just now about a number of great initiatives is not, we weren't able to hear that much from various countries about how 4.7 is being implemented, because at the international level, we get less of this particular analysis, which I wish we could get more of. So thank you, Jay, for providing that. But some of the overall trend lines is really to think about the degree to which Agenda 2030 has changed what was happening already. So that is to say, you have development efforts that were ongoing and hopefully in an increasing fashion. And one would imagine that with a new agenda, there would be an acceleration of activity. So it should be 2012, 13, 14, 15, and a spike to achieve Goal 4 and 4.7. But as far as I can tell, and please if I'm wrong, I would love to learn more. But as far as I can tell, the trend line is there's not this big spike. It's mostly the same. And I think there's a meta fact here that Goal 4.7, if it were applied, would actually bridge that gap. So what that goal talks about is thinking critically. Does that mean I'm done? Thank you, everybody. This has been great. No, so what that goal does, the purpose is to really ensure that education leads to greater coherence between words and deeds. That is, when you have a solid education about sustainable development, about gender equality, global citizenship, then the words that are written on paper actually turn into actions that take place on the ground. But that gap still exists, and I think that that's something we should be trying to address through this conference and many others like it. Another way one could think about Goal 4.7 is that it's essentially a summary of all the SDGs at a holistic level in one paragraph. It references gender equality, as I mentioned, sustainable lifestyles, sustainable development. And one could say, instead of the phrase that's there, ensure that all the SDGs are taught to all populations in a holistic manner. And this, I think, is actually why Anselmo often says that Goal 4.7 shouldn't be under Goal 4, because it's actually far broader than just education. It's about all of these other issues, and to stick it into 4.7 makes it seem more narrow than perhaps it should be. But to take this analysis a little further, we live in a time of political expediency, a time where competition between individuals, groups, and nations are deemed the best way towards progress. But if you think about an organic body, it doesn't compete with itself. We always say that competition leads to the best outcomes. But if my body began to compete with itself, it wouldn't lead to a good outcome. It would be incoherent with itself. And I think Goal 4.7 recognizes that what we need today is a different approach to development, a different approach to progress that recognizes the interconnectivity and the interdependence of humanity and its relationship to the world. So there's an implicit call for revolution, not just in our education system, but in how we problem solve. And we're far from there. If you were in the room or if you watched the video of what happened during the Goal 4 review this year at the HLPF, most of it was the traditional, this is what my country's doing and it's going well, or these are some of the shortcomings, we would love your help. But there were a couple of moments of open hostility between countries. And I found this to be so contrary to what Goal 4.7 is talking about that we should really take note. Is the way towards problem solving that we have now coherent with the words of Goal 4.7? And it's in fact this paragraph that's trying to help us overcome those barriers. So I'm going to articulate just a few of them and then how I think Goal 4.7 would address them, and then I only have 15 more minutes of materials. Is this thing on? Okay. So one of the challenges we see today is these short-term political wins. But Goal 4.7 is a long-term goal, which means investment in it won't result in that short-term political win. But if it were implemented, this mentality of short-term wins would be demonstrated as inconsistent with the SDGs. So there's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. You need Goal 4.7 to demonstrate that we need to think more long-term, but you can't have 4.7 if you're not thinking long-term, you see? There's also this crippling sense of urgency, which I think is worth keeping in mind. But when every problem is seen as so urgent, we don't allow for patient and dispassionate read of the situation. So yeah, the firefighters are always needed in an urgent situation, but you also need something to help us rebuild. And I think that's what education is about. This constituency-based advocacy and the culture of competition I referenced earlier is incoherent with Goal 4.7. I won't get into that. And then most importantly, there's this science policy gap. So that is to say, we understand the realities of the world in ways we haven't before. It's really quite astounding how much information we have. But yet, to translate that into policy, let alone into action, is a real gap that we have to overcome. And I think that's what 4.7 is trying to do. So a few of the key points that came out of HLPF this year with respect to 4.7 could be found in the Sustainable Development Goals report, which was prepared in advance of the HLPF. But that opens its section by saying, its Goal 4 section by saying, education enables upward socioeconomic mobility and is key to escaping poverty. Now, while that's true, and I respect that, this framing dominates the discourse. Education is a tool for materialistic ends. It is a way to put more money in the pockets of people, which, not a bad thing on its face. I think it undermines and undercuts the depth of what education really provides. One could say instead, equality education is a necessary prerequisite to solving the world's greatest problems, including climate change, poverty, and social fragmentation. This would be more inclusive of the kind of education we need, and yet our framing is still often limited to this poverty eradication and jobs dimension. Not to undermine that, but to think about the three pillars of sustainable development, which are environmental, economic, and social. If we're only talking about economics, I worry about the others. So if you watch the video of the session, it seemed, so this is the session in July. There's a video, webtv.un.org, July 9th, the afternoon session, for those of you who are watching. There were really two conversations that were ongoing. One was about the shortcomings of the traditional approaches to education. This is super valid. So this is teacher training, this is infrastructure, this is literacy and numeracy, And that conversation is vital, and it's happening. It's about trend lines, urgency, all of this. And the second conversation was addressing shortcomings in actual curriculum. So what is your ability to understand your role in the world, global citizenship, gender equality? And as I was watching it, because I rewatched it this morning, because I'm that kind of guy, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if these two conversations could come together? If when we were discussing literacy, we were also talking about what the students are reading. When we're discussing numeracy, we articulate why these numbers matter, and we use numbers that are helpful to think about the broader context. When we're lacking infrastructure, we call on the community to help serve each other and find infrastructure. This is something that the Baha'i community has experience in, and I can chat about that later. But there are ways that you can use Goal 4.7 to overcome many of the challenges that we see. In the chair's summary, there are a couple of really great lines in there. The international community must move out of its comfort zone. But as I referenced earlier, I wonder if the international community is ready to. It was repeatedly stated that the world's not on track to meet the goals. But again, another small analogy that I think would be helpful is that if you measure this linearly, there may be a problem. If you imagine that there's a 15-year SDG horizon, if you want to do 1/15 of it every year, it would be like building a 15-story building, just one story on top of another, without building a foundation. Education is that foundation, and I think we have to spend a little bit of time building down into the core of what's affecting us, so that then building up is much quicker and more sustainable. So my favorite line, and I'll close with this, of the summary report, is that Goal 4 requires a revolutionary reimagining of education in the modern world. So we can help with that revolutionary reimagining, and this is our challenge, I think. Employment and jobs remain a goal, but they are not the goal. Skills and knowledge remain a goal, but they are also not the goal. Problem solving, collaboration, service, mutual respect, even love, these are actually the goals of an education system. If we're able to implement these, which is what is articulated in 4.7, then the rest will fall into place. So thank you very much. And Selmo, sorry for talking so much. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you. I give you a little bit more time because you come all the way from New York, So it's 14 hours flight,
And
Okay.
I had 14 hours of material.
14, sorry? Okay. Thank you. Okay, now from the target 4.7, let's move to goal 16, Goal 16, as you know, prioritizes justice, peace, justice, strong institution, or justice and peace, or what we call PHD, peace, human rights, and democracy, which we discussed thoroughly last year, the first forum. May I invite Josna Mohan? She's a coordinator of Asia Development Alliance. She's from India. You have 15 minutes. Okay. Can you, with a big hands, to welcome Josna? There will be she has a PowerPoint, yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good afternoon again. And as Anselmo says, PhD, so there are two PhD, Peace, Human Rights and Democracy, but I'm other PhD, the doctoral one, which is not seen very highly, but still, unfortunately, I'm a PhD. So, moving to our presentation, I'm talking about Goal 16. Goal 16 is something ADA has been working on for past few years, and we feel that Goal 16 is an accelerator of all the goals, all the SDG goals. So, and as it was mentioned, and we know that Goal 16 was one of the goals that was reviewed this year, one of the toughest goal. In fact, all the tougher goals were reviewed this year, and so maybe there was no such declaration. But we have been trying to do advocacy on Goal 16, and we're trying to mainstream Goal 16 along with all the other goals. We want Goal 16 to be actually institutionalized, just like Goal 17 to be reviewed every year. So basically, as we know, with the adoption of Agenda 2030, we had SDGs that focus on international community turned to ensuring robust monitoring, accountability for the commitment at all levels, that is national, regional, and global levels. And the agenda, the process around Goal Agenda 2030 has seen unprecedented level of engagement by civil society, but we also see there is a significant gap, in the engagement at the civil society. We can discuss that. We can see that at the national level, there has been significantly low level of engagement. We have seen at the regional and global level, we have seen that the engagement is better, but the national level and at the local level, it's been really bad. And so the civil society has been asking for accountability from the government, and governments are very reluctant to talk about the accountability system and how they are monitoring and reviewing the Goal 16. Thank you so much, Dan. So the question is whether Goal 16 is achievable. Because we feel that Goal 16 or any other goal, in fact, SDGs are, they're very much dependent on the political will of the government. So do we really think SDG 16, where all the critical issues are covered under SDG 16, do we really think is going to be achievable until there is a political willingness from the government to think, to monitor and review the data gaps? And we see that Goal 16 has also cross-cutting agenda, and now we have started talking about Goal 16 plus, because 16 cuts across most of the goals, especially 1, 5, 10, 13, and then 16 and 17. So we talk about Goal 16 plus. So looking at the importance and critical aspect of Goal 16, and reluctance from the government, but still the civil society is very hopeful that we are continuously monitoring and reviewing, but that's the question whether Goal 16 could be reviewed, would be achieved. And if it is not achieved, then we really doubt about the entire SDG system by 2030. So there have been some events in last few years on Goal 16, and we had, like as Anselmo mentioned, there was Busan Democracy Forum last year, here in Busan in January, where Goal 16 was discussed and we came up with a declaration. Then we had Ulaanbaatar Democracy Forum earlier this year in Mongolia, and where again Goal 16 was discussed. Then the Rome SDGs conference was organized in Rome this April, where we came up with the Rome Declaration. The civil society actually came up with the Rome Declaration. You can just click on the link and you can have a Rome Declaration if you want to sign. You can go ahead, please. And then just earlier this month, DFID also organized Goal 16. So now they are also showing interest in being part of the Goal 16. I think it also looks very fashionable to be part of Goal 16. And later this year, Wafuna with the UN and the government of Timor-Leste are also organizing Goal 16 plus event later in Dili in Timor-Leste. So ADA, with some of the partners, TAP Network and Forus, primarily we thought of doing a monitoring report on Goal 16. We could not due to the time, and also we looked at the data gaps, so it was practically very difficult for any of the partners to come to review every target of the goals. But still, we tried to gather some of the case studies from some 11 countries with our global partners, and we did a report on Goal 16. And there were a few more partners who were part of this Goal 16 studies. They were like Safer World, Civicus, Namati, and others, and they have all come up with their own methodology, how to monitor Goal 16, and so if you want, you can have access to this goal. And we also launched this report this year in July in HLPF. So we have come up with some of the recommendations and some of the national level challenges that we are facing in monitoring and implementing the Goal 16. So these are the 11 countries that were discussed during this. We have taken these 11 countries like Brazil, Colombia, Canada, Cambodia, Congo, Nigeria, Nepal, Pakistan, Slovenia, Timor-Leste, and UK. It was done randomly. There was no such methodology. We just wanted to see in different global north and global south where the data is available, whether civil society is also willing to participate. And so there was no such thought of choosing the countries except some of the countries in Asia. And each case studies were developed by the national platforms in the country. So national platforms are national coalition who have their members in across the country. So they help them getting the national level data national level data and indicators to see to monitor the goal 16, and they collected the case studies. And each case study was also provided, they provide the national level policy recommendations. So we made sure while preparing the recommendations, we made sure that these recommendations are coming from all these respective countries to make it more authentic. So there are some key capacity development gaps that we identified in the study, was like absence of an official platform for civil society spotlight reporting. I mean, that's the general one. There is no such official platform. I mean, when the governments are presenting their VNR, but then there is no such official platform where the civil society can actually present and put their report on the UN website. Again, there's a dearth of capacity development workshops, training and resource and tools. I mean, this is the fifth year of SDGs, and so far, I mean, if you look at the local level, or even the middle level, people do not know about SDGs. So there's a lot of capacity development gaps. There's a limited number and nature of convening and consultations, facilitate multi-stakeholder exchange. So multi-stakeholder exchange is not very much happening, mostly within the government. Sometimes the civil society is invited or not invited. We go and we discuss. VNR has been obviously very, very much non-inclusive. I mean, 80% of the case we have seen when they develop the VNR, they do not consult, or sometimes they put the VNR report on the website for a few days and give your inputs, sort of things happens. As far my experience goes in Asia, most of the countries, the civil society have been only consulted during the national consultations or any event. But when it comes to writing the VNR or being some part of VNR, it's been very limited. We just saw in Indonesia where the civil society were able to write something, but usually it's not happening. Data collection and disaggregated data is very difficult to get, I mean, while writing the reports. And when it comes to Goal 16, there is a very, very limited awareness, and the data, again, against some targets and indicators are just non-existing. So the global trends towards shrinking, and then we know shrinking civic spaces, which is one of those crucial issues, especially we are facing the challenges in all parts of Asia, except Northeast Asia, I believe, is better, but then shrinking civic space is one of the challenges that we are facing. So there are capacity issues at different levels, and we see the trends in ways in CSOs. The other issues are like access and manage available fund from philanthropic institution, national government, the private sectors, and other actors, and then create and disseminate SDG 16 civil society spotlight report, and collect and aggregate data to inform evidence-based program, because it's difficult. Okay, I'm just finishing it. So we really need to have disaggregated data when we want to monitor the Goal 16. The other gaps, like there are challenges at the national level to feed into civil society overall capacity and needs of civil society. Then often from national government inability and unwillingness to meaningfully engage the civil society in the whole process. Then the national governments, the action of broader regional and international actors, such as UN agencies, also contribute to the decreased capacity of civil society. We have seen that they require CSO involvement in follow-up and review, which is not happening. Then encourages SDG 16 civil society spotlight reporting. And they also need to provide meaningful engagement opportunities for civil society in global and the regional platforms. And based on the national level recommendations, we put them all together, and we have added some of the recommendations. You can see some of the recommendations are: we need to create a formal space for CSO spotlight reporting. Then we need to support additional research in order to guarantee the quality of the research. Then improving coordination and a clear vision of the parallel reports is very important. Then inclusive process of developing reports collectively. Early development of reports, ideally 9 months before, which is too much because usually you see all the reports coming just 1 month before the HLPF. But support for further data collection, especially in the places where data collection capacities are very limited. We have also discussed about how to accelerate the action and implementation of Goal 16. And it's about, we recommended establishing a formal platform to collect, showcase, and review commitments from different countries. Then national implementation, government should develop an overarching cross-cutting national implementation plan for 2030 agenda. Then sub-national implementation, government should translate and integrate SDG 16 at a sub-national level, from the national to sub-national and the local community level. Apart from that, governance, countries need to develop their transparent governance system. Then participation of elected parliamentarian is also one of the important aspects that came up. Enabling environment, because as we discussed, there is a shrinking civic spaces. How do we make it more enabling, where there is more involvement of the civil society? Then human right, which is being somehow neglected, and although it's being discussed, but then when it comes practically, there are human rights issues in most of the Southeast, South Asian countries, Central Asia. So how do we tackle, how do we get them all together in the Goal 16? Data, as we said, there's a lack of data. I mean, some of the countries, you will see, they have targeted only 2 or 3 targets in the Goal 16. So there's no data, or they don't want to touch on the data. Then public access to information. Most of the information is not available publicly. And bottom-up approach is important. Also, civil society, they need to evaluate its value offer in Goal 16. Partnership for knowledge needs to be recognized. And national capacity building and awareness raising is important. Apart from that, awareness, inclusion, and active participation of citizens. Coordinated implementation and integrated implementation is an urgent need to fully develop the processes and approach. So, thank you for, I went very fast, but if you want to know further, you can look at the report. Thank you so much.
So very content, very heavy. So don't worry. So we'll send you by email the full text so you can digest tonight. Okay, thank you very much. So obviously the 16 has many components: peace, human rights, civic space, citizens participation. That's why there are a lot of content in this SG 16. So we will discuss more tomorrow. We have a few sessions dealing with the SG 16. Okay, thank you, Josna, once again. So next, let's invite Jeff from New York. He's wearing the nice T-shirts, UN, but he's not working for UN. He wants to transform UN. That's why he's wearing UN T-shirts. So you have 15 minutes. Okay?
Are you sure?
Let's give a big hand. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, who remembers Robin Williams in Good Morning Vietnam? Anybody? Well, I'm going to do my best imitation of Robin Williams and say, "Good afternoon, Busan!" Yeah. Now, could someone please read the back of my T-shirt? Go ahead. Read it out loud. Can you read it? Dan, read it. What is the UN we need? UN 2020. And then, shout after me, multilateralism matters. Multilateralism matters. Come on, people, multilateralism matters. Fantastic. Give yourselves a round of applause. Yeah. Let's wake up. So, Insamas asked me to speak on the outcome of the SDG Summit. We've learned from Dan that a few of us know what SDGs mean, and the UN 2020 campaign. So first, what is UN 2020? UN 2020 is a civil society-led initiative that provides a platform to promote cooperation and dialogue among civil society groups, governments, and the UN in support of a people-centered multilateralism. And UN 2020 is supported by a coordination group of Civicus, the Stimson Center, the Workable World Trust, the World Federalist Movement, Frederick Ebert Stiftung, New York, and the Serapis International, among others. And since 2017, we have been urging member states, civil society, and UN officials to prepare for a successful, well-prepared 75th anniversary commemoration for the UN in 2020 that will include a meaningful process of stock-taking, review, and strengthening, indeed transformation, of the multilateral system. So we were very pleased that last June the General Assembly adopted a modalities resolution that decided that the UN shall prepare a leaders' summit on the 21st of September next year to commemorate the 75th anniversary under the theme, "The Future We Want, the United Nations We Need, reaffirming our collective commitment to multilateralism." And the UN will also be organizing official commemorative events on the 26th of June on the occasion of the signing of the UN Charter, and on 24 October in 2020, and has invited countries and citizens from around the world to also engage in their own dialogues about the future we want and the UN we need in their own commemorative events. And in fact, in 10 days' time, on the 24th of October, the Secretary General will announce the launch of the biggest ever global conversation on how we need to close the gap between the future we need and the UN, the future we want and the UN we need, if we are to be successful to tackle such issues as climate change, soaring inequality, migration, human rights violations, as well as other disturbing global trends. And citizens from around the world will be invited to participate in a series of global dialogues on the major challenges we face and the role of global cooperation in addressing them. And from the point of view of UN 2020, we are faced with a twin crisis of both democracy and multilateralism. And we are deeply concerned about a UN system that is under-resourced, under attack, and unable to respond adequately to the many challenges facing humanity. And there is an urgent need to strengthen and transform the United Nations system so it will be able to meet the terrible challenges of this century and to avoid the catastrophic failures of the last century. So these UN 75 dialogues will address the key questions. What kind of UN do we want in 25 years? And what kind of UN must we have if the SDGs are to be achieved by 2030? And beyond 2030, let us imagine the kind of UN we will need in 2045 when the UN celebrates its 100-year anniversary, where the values undergirding the UN are transformed from national sovereignty to global solidarity, from military alliances to collective security, from peacekeeping to peace enforcement, from voluntary political agreements to legal obligations, and from multilateralism to a global constitutional democracy. This is the vision we as civil society can offer to the United Nations and to member states next year as they commemorate the 75th anniversary. Now, how am I on time? That's already 5 minutes. I'm in deep trouble, friends. Well, let's look at UNGA Week. How many people have been to UNGA Week in New York in the past 5 years? And how many people were there last month? Just a handful. Well, I mean, I think as everyone knows, the opening of the GA every year in New York is a singular and epic display of multilateralism at work, at its best and at its worst, with world leaders of every stripe, from autocrats to democrats, from populists to nationalists, sharing the world stage. And also, as a consequence, ministers, diplomats, CEOs, parliamentarians, civil society activists, think tanks, and many others gathered to network, to demonstrate, and to feverishly plan for the year ahead. And that's what many civil society colleagues and activists did last month in New York. But let's be very clear, the multilateral system is under tremendous stress. Just last week, the Secretary General announced that the UN would run out of money by the end of the month, informing the diplomatic community that the UN would be open from now on only from 9 to 5, no evening receptions, no events over the weekends, all travel and conferences postponed, and the staff may not get paid next month unless member states pay up their outstanding dues in the amount of over $1.3 billion, with the US alone owing over $1 billion. So let's look at the SDG Summit itself. The SDG Summit first was convened back-to-back along with the Climate Action Summit. Also, it was followed up by high-level meetings on financing for development, universal health coverage, and the Samoa Pathway. There was also the high-level meeting on the elimination of nuclear weapons. The SDG Summit featured a series of 6 55-minute leader dialogues that provided the opportunity for world leaders to join a cohort of civil society leaders representing the major groups and other stakeholders to make recommendations on 6 main themes inspired by the 2019 Global Sustainable Development Report and the Secretary General's annual SDG Progress Report. Now, of note was the convening of the first ever civil society forum organized by UNDESA in cooperation with the major groups of the stakeholder steering group that engaged in a dialogue with participating diplomats and other stakeholders on the themes of systemic issues, institutional reform, accountability, and thereby joining the SDG Business Forum and the second high-level local and regional governments forum. And as co-chair, Dan Perel perhaps can give us some of his insights as to the results and outcomes of that particular meeting. And it establishes a very important precedent for future annual civil society forums during UNGA Week, and we certainly anticipate that to be the case next year in 2020. So some of the major SDG Summit outcomes included the adoption of a declaration. The Secretary issued a decade of action and delivery for the SDGs to deliver the SDGs by 2030. He announced that the first annual platform to drive SDG progress will take place at UNGA 2020 as a part of the UN's commemoration of its 75th anniversary. And the UN launched an SDG Acceleration Action web-based platform where countries and all stakeholders are urged to publicly post their initiatives that will contribute to the accelerated implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Now, there were also a plethora of other activities, events outside of the UN campus itself that included events from civil society, from the private sector, from parliamentarians, from universities and think tanks from around the world. The Friday before, there was the Friday climate strike that was inspired by Greta Thunberg and other teenage activists that took place around the world, where tens of thousands marched in New York City from Foley Square to Battery Park. There was the People's Summit on Climate Rights and Human Survival, organized by Amnesty and Greenpeace. There was the Global Week of Action on Peace, Climate, and Inequality, organized by our own very Anselmo Lee and other civil society partners with the Action for Sustainable Development platform. There were many other events as well, but I want to go to linking 2019, the UNGA 2019 with UN 75 in UNGA 2020. And what I suggest is we need to use the energy and ambition generated by civil society at UNGA 2019 as a pivot to prepare for UN 75. The UN 75 theme and a year of activities is an opportunity to amplify and carry forward the CSO messages developed and endorsed at UNGA 2019, including the People's Assembly Declaration, the People's Summit by the People's Summit by the People's Summit on Climate Rights and Human Survival, the Belgrade Call to Action, and others. It's also an opportunity to amplify and carry forward your own messaging, advocacy, and events in 2020. Of course, we would like everyone to organize and support UN 75 global dialogues at every level around the world, and organize and support conferences, events, side events, and commemorative activities on UN 75 and global governance reform. Just a couple of words about and I came, it took me 14 hours to get here, Anselmo, so, no. But just a couple words about the UN 2020 calendar events. So we're going to be organizing our next annual strategy meeting in New York on 11 and 12 November, beginning the evening of the Monday on the 11th, to bring together key leaders of global, regional, and national civil society networks to discuss their participation in UN commemorative events, dialogues, and activities during 2020, including their participation in the planning of our proposed UN 75 NGO Forum. Let's call it the NGO Millennium Forum Plus 20, because it's based upon the precedent of the NGO Millennium Forum that took place in May of 2000 in advance of the Millennium Summit that took place in September of 2000. Now, this will be excuse me here. So in addition to the annual strategy meeting, we are also looking at the idea of having a retreat during the Pyeongchang Global Peace Forum in February 2020. And again, we look forward to the opportunity of bringing together key civil society partners to discuss the framework for a civil society declaration that will feed into the negotiations of the UN political declaration that would be adopted by world leaders during the UN 75 summit in September of 2020. Finally, I welcome everyone's participation in our activities in UN 2020. We will want to invite you to participate remotely in our strategy session next month, and we look forward to celebrating and commemorating the 75th anniversary of the United Nations next year with everyone. Thank you very much.
So what was your slogan? You said multilateralism matters, right?
Multilateralism matters.
Very, multilateral is very difficult to pronounce, So I said, whatever matters, it's okay. Multilateralism, we are discussing here the global challenges, the climate crisis, the rising inequalities, conflict here and there. But who is going to address all this? It's the United Nations. United Nations based on multilateral, not unilateralism, which means not America first, not Korea first, not Japan first, together first, We need to be together to address global challenges. But problem is now UN is crisis, no money, UN cannot pay the salary, The whole financial crisis, political crisis. That's why we cannot let it go like this. That's why civil society group, we got together to challenge, to create a new momentum, to transform and strengthen the multilateralism. That's what we are doing, As a continuation of 2019, this year, as you know, this year was the end of first cycle, 4-year cycle of SDG, but next year is another big year. So how to continue our momentum? That's why he's wearing T-shirts, okay? So let's continue to discuss tomorrow more our strategy. Thank you for your input, energetic input. Okay, let's give a big hands, Jeff. I was very worried about him because he missed a flight, a few hours delay, right? Because of typhoon in Japan, But he survived and he managed to come. Thank you for that. Okay, now we discussed a lot in New York. Now we are down to earth, on the ground. What is really happening? So our longtime friend Song Jin-ho, everyone knows Song Jin-ho because he was the local host of the first Busan Democracy Forum as an NGO that time, but now he's wearing the head of the KOICA, that shows the NGO KOICA good collaboration. So he's going to give us what KOICA has been doing in terms of global system education and global campaigns, especially stand together for one world. Let's give a big hands to welcome Song Jin-ho.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Jeffrey. Yes, we repeat again. This is not New York style. He's New Yorker, yeah? So I may say, and then you may repeat. Good afternoon, Busan. Good afternoon, Busan. O'Malley, O'Malley, yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, I want to say first from the word that it's a famous word. If you want to dig the well deep, you should dig wide. You know, the three strong points, the three critical role of the civil society, CSO, is, within my understanding, the first is and should be the policy engagement, including advocacy, including watchdog monitoring and whatever. And second, the civil society should dig deep education, capacity building, including global citizenship education, development education, peace education, human rights education, whatever. And the third one is, in order to dig deep well, you should start to widen our scale and scope. Awareness building, consensus building within the population of the civil society. That is campaign. In my remembrance, when I was in civil society, at that time I was the co-chair of the GCAP Korea, Global Call to Action Against Poverty, as well as the GCAP East Asia convener. That time was the time of the MDG, Millennium Development Goals. Our slogan, the global slogan, was very interesting. We so-called this campaign's name is End Poverty Campaign or the White Band Campaign. That time our slogan was stand up and speak out. The other year, stand up and take action. But the reason why we to put stand together, no more stand alone, no more America first, no more Brexit. We need the sense of togetherness within our global civil society. That's the reason why the UN SDG Action Campaign, as well as the A4SD, they choose the slogan as stand together for bara 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 bara. Yeah. So this campaign was organized by the UN SDG Action Campaign and with the civil society network, which named A4SD. But in Korea, the GCAP Korea was no more working. It's in name, but not so active. So that's the reason why in this year, we, the COICA, would like to support the organizing campaign. So, Stand Together Now campaign, what is the Stand Together Now campaign? You can read. How does it get started? You can read. Okay, let's go. The next. Yeah, so September 21st, this is the day of UN designated the UN International Day of Peace. This year, the theme of the Day of Peace is climate action for peace. At the same time, that week, we had lots of the summit within the United Nations General Assembly. 23rd September, we had UN Climate Action Summit, and 24th and the 25th, we had the UN SDG campaign. So we take the slogan as a Stand Together for One World, which included the Stand Together for One Earth, one humanity, one Asia, one Korea, as well as one peace and one justice. Yeah, next. Yeah, we Korea support to organize the simultaneous common campaign action within 45 countries, including Korea. And this year, we just calculated only less than the 20,000 population within the 45 countries. In Korea, we organized campaign in Seoul and Gwangju Metropolitan City, Daegu Metropolitan City, Gangwon, Jeonbuk, Jeju Province. And also in global, 44 countries, including 14 Asia, 15 Africa, 8 Latin America, as well as the 7 Middle East and Central Asia. So let me say in festival in Seoul, which named 2019 Peace and SDG Global Citizen Festival in Seoul, which was held in the National Assembly Square and hosted by the MOFA and KOICA and A4SD. Also, one of the broadcasting company, MBC, they joined this campaign. Okay, next. Our main activity was opening ceremony, One World K-pop concert, SDG Hope Bike Parade, and 120 exhibition and experience booths, including the 4 zones of the Development Cooperation Zone, ODA Zone, SDG Zone, Global Citizenship Education Zone, and Youth Zone. There were 70 more partners, including CSOs, INGOs, social enterprises, fair trade organizations, human rights advocates, peace forum, media group, independent film activists, overseas volunteer groups, local government, anti-corruption groups, global citizenship educators, high school clubs, university student volunteer groups, members of parliament, and in total we have 10,000 citizens join in this campaign. Also in Gwangju, 10 days later, we organized the same campaign with the participation of the National Human Rights Commission and Gwangju Metropolitan City Office. Next. Very similar activities held in Gwangju. And next. And for different cities, they have their own ways of the organizing campaign, doing campaign, including film festival, talk concert, exhibition, and recruiting campaign, photo exhibition, promotion booths, campaign, action idea contest, writing contest, climate action for peace event, and whatever. Yeah. So, and then in 44 countries, they have the very innovative ways of the doing campaign by themselves. The very different programs that they can organize. They could organize, including SDG awareness raising campaign, Stand Up Together Now campaign, music concert, art festival, exhibition and experience booth, beach cleanup campaign, art contest, writing contest, SDG debate, SDG forum, SDG 4th anniversary ceremony, especially in Nepal, Equality Run in the Philippines, SDG Fun Run, SDG Game Zone, Global Citizenship Education Model Class, SDG Pop Quiz Contest, and so on. Yeah. Let me show you some pictures. I'm not sure which country it is, but some of countries within 44 countries, they have their campaign. And next, it might be Philippines and East Timor. Next. Yangon, Myanmar, and police officials from Guatemala. And next, Yangon, yeah. And Espanol, I can read, yeah. Next. Yes, Indonesia. The upper left one is Cote d'Ivoire. And next. Yeah, and next. Yeah, it's also Indonesia. And yes, go on. Yes. And next. And next. Yeah, it's Peru. I think it's Peru in Latin America. And next. Philippines, Fun Run. And yeah, this is the Nepal. NFN, NGO Federation of Nepal, and KOICA Nepal office. They organized the campaign and the ceremony. And next, yes, Vietnam Equality Run. And next, in Palestine. And yeah, and next, Yes, stand together for one earth, one humanity, one Asia, one justice. Stand together for one world. And next, and this was happened in Jeju Island, Climate Action for Peace. And next, yeah, this is the Seoul campaign in National Assembly, the square. And next, and even our national president Moon Jae-in, he joined the Climate Action Summit as well as the SDG Summit in New York. Yes, next. Yeah, that is. So I will show you the short video clip on our activities.
Peace is at the heart of all our work at the United Nations. And we know peace is much more than a world free of war. It means resilient, stable societies where everyone can enjoy fundamental freedoms and thrive rather than struggle to meet basic needs. Today, peace faces a new danger, the climate emergency, which threatens our security, our livelihoods and our lives. That is why it is the focus of this year's International Day of Peace. And it's why I'm convening a Climate Action Summit. This is a global crisis. Only by working together can we make our only home peaceful, prosperous and safe for us and future generations. On this International Day of Peace, I urge all of you, take concrete climate action and demand it of your leaders. This is a race we can and must win.
Thank you very much.
Wow, very impressive. I guess many of you joined this campaign in September. I remember Nepal. Jitram is here. Nepal was one of the largest gathering, this campaign. How was your experience in Nepal? Briefly, I saw you in the photo.
It was so interesting and so fruitful meeting. All Koika Nepal support to organize that event. Nepal government, UN agencies, all civil society organization, and all stakeholders sit together and stand together campaign in one place. Thank you.
Okay, very good. This shows, global citizen education is not only in the classroom, in school, it has to be in the street, it has to be the place where people are living, struggling, that's the idea of this global campaign. Within a few months, I hope next year we can organize better, more people and more impact, not only the 44 countries and more countries and also New York. So they're all connected, what is happening in New York and different cities and villages, so that we can have a really united voice together, for multilateralism. Very difficult word, Okay, very good. Thank you for your presenter. May I invite presenters to come the podium? So let's collect a few questions. We don't have much time. This is a more informative session, but nevertheless, if you have any comment, questions, we'll take one or two, and then we need to evacuate this room for opening ceremony. So, anybody wants to make a comment and questions? Please sit. Yeah. About presentation. So we will send you by email or Dropbox all the presentation PowerPoint. Okay, please raise up your hand. Let me see, 1, 2, 3. Your name and organization briefly. Okay, not very short.
Hi, my name is Isha. My name is Isha from Sri Lanka. I represent actually the consortium human rights agencies in Sri Lanka. My questions to you first regarding the global citizenship and also multilateral organization, and 3 for Mr. Song. One is, I understand you are doing program in Sri Lanka. That's going to be. And it was something that we like to know because you didn't have time to tell. But what I want to ask you is, Sri Lanka has 2 different levels of education. We have a provincial level, zonal level, and as well as national level. So I want to know how your approach is going to be into these 2 levels of this global citizenship education. That's one for you. One quick one for multilateral. Having problem with UN, you are bringing the NGOs, strengthening NGOs. Where are you going to stand with it? Because UN is having problem with the financially, and that's one of the things. And Mr. Son, I need to know how COICA is approaching Sri Lanka on SDG, because I see SDG is not much through the COICA is happening in much. I want to know what's your future program on that. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So next. No. Okay, who else? Over there, yes. Yeah, okay.
Hi, my name is Akmal. I'm from Fiji, Suva, Fiji, and I think the only Pacific Islander here. So thank you very much. So in terms of COICA, this year, before Fiji's VNR, the civil society organizations were not really involved with the VNR reporting. So the private sector organization, NGOs in Fiji, we all came together and we formed the SDG VNR task force. And we have made a shadow report, but our report has been on all 17 goals. So just on the SDG anniversary on the 25th of September this year in Fiji COICA office, it was supported, we launched our VNR national report, draft form. So thank you for that support. Moving further, in terms of the stand-up, just a comment, I think SDG has to be localized. It has to have ownership of the local people. What usually happens is for SDG, any UN language, if you go to the grassroots level, there's this disparity where people, when they look at the UN, they think it's something very high and big and mighty. So at the grassroots level, people don't associate with it. What we must really do is, at the grassroots, we need to people have their own symbols. So for example, when we went to Marshall Islands for the SDG education, we got the ladies to come up with their own SDG symbols, 17 of them. and that's how they associate with it. For example, gender equality, they had a traditional symbol of a canoe, where there were certain parts traditionally for 5,000 years represented male and female and balance, equality.
Okay.
So it's all about ownership, it's not about money. And as civil society, I think our first focus from money should focus on people so we can do major mobilization. Thank you very much.
Very good. Can you show later your indigenous icon of 17? So let's see, how
Beg your pardon?
your local 17 icons.
Yes,
Okay.
I can share it with everybody. Thank you very much.
Next, please.
I have one question to ask to Khoika representative. I would like to know about the communication channel between Khoika based in Seoul and Khoika in some country in Southeast Asia. For example, like the case of Cambodia, we try to reach out to Khoika office in Cambodia in order to support some activities during the super weeks of the 74 UN General Assembly, but it seemed it failed. We want to cooperate with Khoika in order to mobilize some support on the youth engagement process to raising awareness among young people about SDG, parallel with the UN sessions at the UN headquarters. So could you please explain to me, maybe I will be going back to Cambodia and discuss in detail about the process, and we hope that we will build good communication with Khoika office in Cambodia.
Okay, so a few questions about Khoika. Okay, Joel, please. Let's call it one or two more, and then we'll give the floor to the speaker.
Hello, yes. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Joel Beredo. I'm from Shape Sea based in Thailand. And we work mainly on human rights and peace, but we are gearing towards the marriage of human rights and SDGs. And as you all know, at the UN level, at the global level, we already have human rights conventions, treaties that make that many state parties sign up to ratify. And I just want to know from your end, like, how can we marry further human rights and the SDGs, specifically when we talk about accountability? Because at the end of the day, we need to make governments, states, businesses, and other people and other actors accountable to whatever violations or to whatever deficiencies they have in meeting SDG goals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the last one. Yes, Jasmine, please. Oh, yeah, over there. Yes, after this, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Jasmine Nario Galasa from the Philippines. I was a bit disheartened, with the presentation made on goal 16, and I was wondering if there have been attempts to link with the Small Arms Survey and the Geneva Conference on Armed Violence, something like that. Yes, because it was the Geneva Conference that actually went around, the world, seeking people's perspectives on having this 16.4 added on the list of Sustainable Development Goals. I was wondering if there's that kind of linkage being done with these two. Thank you.
Okay, the last one in the back, please.
네. 전 세계적으로 그 세계 시민 교육과 민주주의는 너무 소리 크네요.
얘기하세요, 괜찮습니다. I will translate for you. Don't worry.
예. 그 민주주의 세계 시민 교육은 포럼 잠시만요.
그냥.
예? 천천히. 갑자기. 예. 예. 그 민주주의와 세계 시민 교육은 그 거대한 자본에 의해 종속되고 갑자기 하려니까. 종속되고 사망했다고 생각하는데 그에 대한 그 어떤 대책을 가지고 있는지 알고 싶습니다.
Okay, very simple but very profound question, challenge question. I believe the democracy and global civil education under the control of capital is not working anymore. So what is your alternative? How can you overcome this control of the capitalism of democracy and global citizen education. Okay, I think this is enough. If ever more, and then we have a time to discuss all these issues tomorrow, different workshops, okay? And also, sorry, I cannot give much time because I want to give only 1 minute each because we have to start the next session. And then some issues we can discuss bilaterally, during the break and also tomorrow workshop, okay? Shall I start from here? 1 minute, just quick summary, and then you can.
Okay, thank you for your question, my friend from Sri Lanka. About your question regarding the structure of provincial level and national level education in Sri Lanka. Yeah, APSEU is collaborating with the Ministry of Education in Sri Lanka and also National Institute of Education in Sri Lanka, NIE. So NIE and Ministry is our counterpart. Also, Ministry mentioned that there is a big gap between rural area and urban area in education. And also, they highlighted that global citizenship education is not only important for rural area, but also for the urban area. So their basic strategy is to integrate all the stakeholders from nationwide areas. So this year, they are doing situational analysis, not only in urban area, but also in the rural area. And then next year, they will develop a GCD curriculum, draft curriculum. And then in 2 years later, they will do a pilot testing in urban area and also in rural area. And then they get the feedbacks.
Yeah. Okay, next. 1 minute, please, really.
1 minute on capitalism. Great. So, I think that this actually speaks to the framework of how we approach problem solving, that we just want the answer. It's quite clear to me that there is no one answer at this moment. There's cooperatives, there may be a universal basic income, there may be a wealth tax, there may be whole new economic mechanisms that we don't understand. And one challenge I think we have is to operate in a mode of process and learning rather than wholesale adopting a new system and assuming it's going to work, because that may be doomed to failure. So we need a learning approach to capitalism. Regarding human rights and the SDGs, I think is a vital question, and we need to think about how we can use the cooperative model of the SDG process, but ensure that it is also not ignoring human rights. I don't have an answer, but let's discuss further.
Okay, Jeff, please.
Yeah, so regarding the issue of the future of multilateralism and the immediate crisis of UN funding, I mean, this is not a new issue. This was also a huge factor in the 1990s, some of us may recall. And in fact, the reason why Ted Turner wanted to give $1 billion to the United States at the end of the 20th century was precisely because the United States was in arrears, to the tune of $1 billion. And so we see history repeating itself. Now, there has been talk in New York about organizing a public campaign to demonstrate our concern and, to protest what is really an outrageous disregard for obligations to the United Nations Charter. Finally, I would just say, one of the more infamous comments made by the U.S. President in this year's General Assembly opening debate was that the future does not belong to globalists, the future belongs to patriots. And I think it's a false dichotomy. And in fact, the President of the European Council characterized the idea of an imminent clash between globalism and patriotism as false and dangerous. And I think, one of the ideas and one of the themes that we're discussing is the importance of global citizenship education, which informs us that we can be both patriots as well as global citizens, and there does not need to be a choice between the two. I think, as the president of COICA had advised, the root of the problem, or the root of the solution, I should say, is education. But meanwhile, we do need to develop campaigns and demonstrations against the more immediate crisis of the financial future of the UN.
Okay, short, please.
Very short. I think it's very important to seek accountability from the government. But what we see, the development, democracy, and human rights CSOs work in silos. First, we need to get together, stand together, and then we seek accountability. But we are doing our own bit to ask the government, and I think engagement is very important at national, regional, or any level. Solicited or unsolicited, but then we need to be engaged with the government to seek accountability from them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so far as I know, the VNR process is not only the task for the respective government alone. This should be the multi-stakeholders approach, including civil society. So we, the COICA, would like to support such kind of the CSO's participation in VNR process in their own respective country. Second one, yes, I know the CCC in Cambodia is very well known, the advocate group in Cambodia, but the COICA Cambodia office is not only Cambodia office, COICA office is very well known about their ODA implementation partners, including INGOs. But frankly speaking, we are not keen in the partners from the advocate, consultant, or researchers. So we have to make a widen approach with the different the partners of your country also. The last one, in order to achieve the SDG goal or the SDG localizing process, CSO's participation is most critical actors. So at the beginning, the civil society, we call on the participation, and then from Busan, we call upon the partnership, but real partnership, equal partnership. And then now we have to talk about the genuine governance in between the multi-stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's give a big hand to all the panelists. Sorry once again, so we need to evacuate this room because they need to rearrange the tables. So you can take away all your belongings outside and we come back before 4 o'clock. Okay, thank you. See you soon, 4 o'clock. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.